Hi, I'm Paul Cleary, Ecosystem Architect at Venafi, and today I'll show you the process necessary to load and test your Adaptable driver against the full Venafi Trust Protection platform. Let's get started. The Adaptable framework provides a mechanism to bring machine identity automation of the Venafi platform through to third-party tools, software, and platforms in a simple, easy-to-consume format where the majority of the development work has already been completed. This video is targeted more specifically to the Adaptable CA and Adaptable application drivers, but the installation and testing process still applies to our other Adaptable driver types as well. At a high level, this is the general process that will be followed when creating a new integration using the Adaptable framework. The first step is creating a PowerShell script using the provided design guidelines, best practices, examples, and development tools. Next, you'll document the configuration requirements of the script that you develop. You'll then want to test that script before even installing the platform using our Adaptable framework simulators, which are provided in the development kit. Then we'll want to see a demonstration of the functionality of the integration to the Venafi ecosystem team. And finally, submitting that code, the Adaptable script, to be reviewed by the Venafi code review team. And once that process is complete, we publish the driver to the Venafi marketplace at marketplace.venafi.com. Sometimes, however, it may be necessary to perform testing against the full Venafi Trust Protection platform. This might be the case in situations where there's more than one target system involved for provisioning, or when testing the entire machine identity lifecycle is needed, from discovery of existing certificates on an end device to renewal of those certificates at the certificate authority, and finally to the automated provisioning and validation of those renewed certificates on the target device. Now we're going to take a look at a screenshot walkthrough of the process, and then I'll demonstrate installing and testing an example driver so that you can see what it looks like in real time. For this example, I'll be using an Adaptable application driver, but again, this process is very similar regardless of whatever type of Adaptable driver you're building. The first step is going to be placing the Adaptable script on the Venafi server in the proper directory according to the type of driver. As you can see, there's a specific directory for each type of Adaptable driver: Adaptable application, bulk provisioning, certificate authority, log, and workflow. Since this is an Adaptable application driver, the next step is going to be moving to the Venafi platform to configure the policy tree to use the new driver that we just placed in that folder. And again, so since this is an Adaptable application driver, I will need to create a credential object that will let me authenticate to the device and or the specific application on that device. You can kind of think of this as authentication needed to perform the automation for this integration. So ask yourself, is this going to need SSH credentials to authenticate to the server? Will there be a separate password or API key necessary to authenticate to the specific application, or update a specific SSL configuration, for example? Whatever the case may be, Venafi platform can accommodate. However, it's important to understand the differences when documenting configuration instructions for the end user. Next, we can test functionality using Trust Protection Platform. For Adaptable CA drivers, this involves requesting, renewing, and revoking certificates, basically everything involved in the certificate lifecycle. For Adaptable application drivers, this involves provisioning certificates in an automated way to third-party systems and devices, as well as potentially discovering what certificates are already in use on those devices in order to bring that inventory under Venafi management. And if everything goes as expected, congratulations, the driver is ready for the Venafi marketplace. Sometimes, however, you'll need to troubleshoot issues with the Adaptable script, and the best place to do that is through the Venafi logs. Logs can be found in a couple of different places throughout the Venafi platform, but the best place to start is looking at the Adaptable application object itself, or the Adaptable CA object, or whichever type of Adaptable integration. You want to look at the object itself within the Venafi platform. And on the General tab, what you'll see is a consolidated list of all of the events that correspond to this specific object. So most of the time, that's a good place to start. If you can't find the specific logs that you're looking for in that location, The next best spot is what captures all of the logs for the Venafi platform, and that's the logging tree and the default SQL channel. And I'll go over that a bit in the demo as well. All right, and with that, let's get started. All right, so the first thing that we'll do is actually download a driver that we want to use from the Venafi marketplace. So for that, I'll go to marketplace.venafi.com. And for this example, I'm going to be using one of our HashiCorp Vault integrations, and we'll use the HashiCorp Vault Adaptable application driver for this. So we'll come to the Venafi marketplace. I'm going to click Install Now, and that will download my driver to the desktop. And at this point, we're at our first step here. So I want to place that driver that I just downloaded into the proper directory inside my program files Venafi scripts directory. So for this one, I'm going to go into Adaptable Application, and I will open up another folder here so we can get to our downloads. So you'll see it's the Vault Venafi zip that we just downloaded here. So I'll open that up, and we can extract it out into the proper directory in Venafi. And it's important to note here, so you see I've copied out the folder, but we actually need the script to be at the proper level. So I'm going to cut that and paste it to make sure everything is at this root level here. Okay, excellent. And once that's done, we now have the ability to apply that integration to a policy folder back at the Venafi platform. So I will go ahead and get logged in, and I'm actually going to log into Web Admin instead of Aperture. It'll take me just to a different user interface here momentarily where we can configure the Adaptable app driver. Okay. And so the first thing that I'll do now is create a new folder where we'll do all of the testing for this driver. And so inside my certificates policy folder here, I'll add a new policy. I'm going to call it just HashiCorp Vault testing and save. And so now that we are highlighting this policy specifically, we have some options that we can configure for this policy. And so you'll see I've got some tabs on the policy view in the center here. I'm going to click on Applications, and Adaptable is actually the first one alphabetically, so that's what is default selected. And so here's where we would actually supply the PowerShell script that we want to use for this test. And so most of the time, again, this is going to match the folder name that you've done in your policy tree here, right? So if I've got HashiCorp Vault testing as my policy folder, chances are the PowerShell script that we want to use for this is the Venafi Vault PowerShell script that we just placed. And so you can see what happens is as soon as I select that script, we do get some additional fields that have been populated based on the script itself. So the Venafi platform recognizes the script. It recognizes that these custom fields have been built into the script by the developer, and then brings these fields into the UI for an end user to enter information into. And so at this point, I would supply any of that information. If it's a private key credential that needs to be entered into the system, I'm just going to put one in here right now. And any other required fields need to be specified here. And so at this point, again, you can specify if every device and application inside this policy folder uses the same credentials, you are able to supply those credentials here. But for the most part, those credentials are going to be supplied down one level at the device layer. And so here we've got our policy folder, and at the policy layer, we've told it that we're using the Venafi Vault Adaptable driver. And so underneath this policy folder, the next thing that we need to do is create a device. And this represents a server or a VM or just a physical or virtual device somewhere that hosts an application, in this case, Vault. And so this would be the device name or host name. and chances are that's going to match the host name or the address here. And we'll go ahead and save that. And so again, you do have the ability to supply a device credential here, and that would be something that would use to authenticate to this device. So an SSH key, SSH certificate, username and password credential that can authenticate to that device, something like that. And then underneath this device object, we have something further called an adaptable application object. And so we would need to add our application and our adaptable object here. And so the best way to think about this is each adaptable object corresponds to one machine identity or one certificate. And so for this, I'm just going to call this, maybe it would be HashiCorp Vault 1, right? And you might have a different credential for Vault 1 as opposed to Vault 2. And so that is the reason for differentiating between a device credential and an application credential, because you can have one device that's running many different applications, in this case, many different vaults from HashiCorp, and each of those, again, could have their own separate credentials. So we'll go ahead and create this vault object here. I'm just going to specify a dummy credential at this point. So we'll go into our credentials, and I'll just call it my Venafi service account credential. You do have the ability to supply a secondary credential here as well. So if it takes a username and password in addition to a certificate, that's something that you have the ability to account for. So I'll go ahead and save this now. And at this point, we have done everything we need to do in order to test this. And so if I had a Vault instance that I was testing with, basically we would need to uncheck that this processing disabled checkbox here to signify to the Venafi system that we want to actually test this process. And once that's done and we've associated a certificate to it, and I'll just choose any old certificate, it doesn't really matter at this point, we then have the ability to come up and push the certificate to the application. And this is the final step that you would select here when you are wanting to test the deployment and provisioning of one of these certificates to your test application. And so you can see it will go through the lifecycle stages of the processing. And if all is well, this should switch to an OK, and we should get information on the certificates page that this certificate has now been installed into our target device. And so for troubleshooting purposes, I don't have an actual HashiCorp Vault server instance here, so we are going to get some errors, and that's what I want because I want to show you a couple of different places to look at logs. And so the first place, the best place to look is going to be on the adaptable application itself. If you click this general tab here, you'll see log files that relate specifically to this object. So any message that comes through on this screen, you know it is related to this specific object. If for whatever reason you don't see the logs that you're looking for here, the next best place is to come to the drop-down menu in the top left and switch to the logging tree and go into our channels and the default SQL channel. And this view will show every single log message that is captured by the Venafi platform. So if it's not, the log message that you are looking for is not in the adaptable object itself, take a look at the full Venafi platform logs in the default SQL channel, and every log message will appear there. I'd like to thank you all for watching. I hope you found that video useful. And as always, if you have any questions at all during the development process, please feel free to reach out to the ecosystem team and myself individually at paul.cleary@venafi.com.